really like to pace whenever I'm doing so. Underneath, just know that I'm doing this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thank you for taking time out of your day to attend or listen to this class. This class is going to be about the MLS Rules and Regulations. Basically, I hope to cover why we have them, some of the ones that are the most misunderstood, and also there are some changes that are taking place, and so I want to present those to you and explain to you why these changes were made. So we will start. The MLS mission statement is there. It's to efficiently provide participants with innovative technology, and pay attention to this particular phrase, accurate information, exceptional education, and superior support to facilitate consumers' real estate needs in a professional manner. Why is the accurate information so important? Because this separates us from those public portals. We provide a platform for you. This platform and this information gives you that extra 10% of information that you need to be the real estate professional, the reason why the consumer will call you. We do provide the public with the most accurate and comprehensive home search portal in the area, which is valleymls.com, your public portal. The difference between the public portal and an MLS is simple. Public portal displays a limited amount of information. It's not going to display all the information because that is your information. It's there to keep the public informed, give them accurate information, but it's not going to give all the information. That is with your MLS, and that's why you pay MLS dues. That's why you attend these classes, so you can learn what's in there and what's not to the public. How are these rules developed? As I've stated earlier, they're not developed by a group of people just to make your job harder. It's not to make you miserable. It is to protect everyone. And we want to make sure that everybody plays on the same level field. First, it starts from NAR. NAR has governing documents that must be adopted by the MLSs. Now, it is a general document. It's not anything that can be specific because, as you're well aware, just in our state, the MLSs have different rules. If anybody here is part of a different MLS, you realize that there are different rules, and that's what is allowed. Every association, every MLS can have rules that are specific to their region. Doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent. But NAR offers this one governing document, and everybody starts with that. There are some changes. As we all know, the industry is constantly changing. And these changes are adopted and modified in our bylaws. Along with that, we have local rules for our association and our MLS. These rules and regulations are created by many volunteers from the different associations coming together to adopt rules to make everybody play on the same field. The way it works is if somebody has a concern, there is an MLS committee that meets, and any concerns or changes or requests are brought before them. It's discussed, and whether it's passed or not, if it's passed, it goes to the next step, which is approval by the Valley MLS Board of Directors. This is something that you can participate in, and I'm going to give a commercial. I highly encourage you to do that. Yes, it's the experience is needed, but also the industry's changing, and this participation is what's needed to keep everybody up to date on this. So let me encourage you to get involved with the MLS in any shape, form, or fashion. As you know, we have a lot of data. We have a lot of listings that are being pended, being closed out. And it's impossible for the MLS staff to govern these. So there is an automated computer system that the MLS has. It's called Listing Data Checker. And what it does, has some programs or has some instructions written in, so it looks for certain things. And a lot of the violations that occur on listings are caught by our listing data checker. There's certain things that it's very intuitive. It helps police and keep the data accurate. We use it extensively to check for certain data that is incorrect or improperly input. Also, something that is vital is the members' participation. If you look on a listing, down at the very bottom left-hand corner of the picture, there's a little check mark there, and that's to report violations. Now, as smart as and intuitive as this program is, it's not going to catch all of them. So we have to be a self-policing profession and in everything that we do, including this data, because again, let me go back to ensuring that the data is accurate. Now, most of these errors are done by mistake, but unfortunately, there's going to be people that will try to bend the rules, and that's why we have to self-govern to protect this. Everybody has to play on the same level field. One thing that separates the MLS from everything else is going to be cooperation and compensation. When someone enters a listing into the MLS, they're ensuring that the seller is going to cooperate with other realtors and also compensate other realtors. Because let me get a show of hands. How many people here are in real estate as a hobby? I didn't think so. We are here to make a living, and compensation has to be offered. As we know, compensation is always negotiated, and there are going to be different forms of compensation. It can be by a percentage of the gross selling price and by showing a definite dollar amount. So that's one of the things that we'll go back to. If you put a number into the MLS listing and you do not define it by either a percentage sign or a dollar sign, the system's not going to know that if you put 5 up there, if it's not $5 or 5%. If you put 500, you don't know if that's $500 or 500%. I think we all would like the 500%. I don't think sellers would agree to it. But that's why you have to have that sign, and that's one of the most common violations because they'll leave that sign off. But that's one thing that separates the MLS from public portals. One of the things that's put on us and that the MLS helps govern is our professionalism. Now, a lot of people know that we should be professional to the consumer, and we should. We also need to be professional with each other, and also we need to show respect, proper respect for the property. That is something that's not always done. It needs to be, because what you are either marketing or showing to potential buyers is someone's single largest financial investment that they have made. They've taken that house and created a home. You need to treat it that way. And so there are rules and to govern that also, but there's also the code of ethics that helps with that too. That's another class that we'll address that another time. Respect for the public. Number 1, follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That's pretty easy. And if you think about it, that's something that we can carry not just in our professional life, but our personal life and our spiritual life. Anything that we can do that will help us become better at being a realtor, being a person, we need to do that. There's a lot of different doctrine, governments, countries that are based on do unto others. And it's something that we can go by. There's a list of things that we can do to respect the public. I am not going to go over them, but if you have any questions about anything that pops up in this class or in the rules and regs, please give me a call and I'll be glad to help you with it. You know, some of the things that we tend to take for granted, leaving a business card, you know, that's something that is courtesy. And if it was your house, you would want to know, about who showed the house. Yep. Secondly, respect for the property. You have to remember that now things have changed, probably more so than they were 20 years ago, but there's a lot of cultural differences that are in our city and in all the cities in the neighboring cities. We need to be very respectful for that property. Again, Just pretend like it's your house. What would you like? What would you not like? There are many times that we're not respectful for animals that are in there. We're not respectful for the cleanliness. We're not respectful for little things like taking shoes off. Whatever it may be, we need to show a little bit of respect. And this is a commercial. In this day of technology, I would not want to be the one that abuses that, because you can be recorded. There's a lot of technology that's recording things in there. So if there is, not every house is going to be perfect, but just make sure you show enough respect for the property and the people and not say anything in there, because it will come back. Again, these are just some of the rules and tips for showing respect for the property. Listing data. Now that's what everything is based off of. If you think about it, in our MLS, everything's based off the listing data. If we don't have listing data or listings in our MLS, we have nothing to show. We have nothing to market. We have nothing to offer the public. So that's why it's imperative that this data be complete and accurate. Make sure the address is complete. Make sure the schools are correct. Don't go by data previous, because a lot of people in the past may not have been as accurate as they needed to. They could have taken it off incorrect information, just passed it on that way. So make sure that you take the time, do your due diligence, and find out, because we know one side of the street may go to one school, the next side of the street goes to another school. Who gets punished? Who gets penalized for that? It's going to be the public, and ultimately it might be you. So that's why it's important when you are entering that listing to make sure that data is accurate. Room dimensions. Sellers are paying a fair amount of money to have you market the property. The least you can do is give it your best effort to market that property. 0 by 0, just to get past the listing input, is not room sizes. Now I know there's a lot of people that are very talented about placing furniture in a room, but I don't think anybody can place furniture in a room that's 1 by 1, 0 by 0, just because somebody did not want to enter the dimensions. Please take the time to do that. Also, features. Features are important. You need to list everything about that particular room or about that house or about the property. Why? Because you don't know if there's somebody out there that's looking for a crown molding or have chair rail in a master bedroom. It may not seem important to you, but to one buyer, it may say, that's going to be my decision on purchasing a home. This master bedroom has to have a chair rail on it. May not be important to you, but you owe it to your seller to put everything in there about your features. Square footage and source of square footage. This is something that people have hollered at me about. They hollered at the MLS department. And I promise you, this information is not to make your job harder. We need to make sure that that information is accurate. The tax record is no longer an acceptable source of square footage. They will tell you that the tax records are not accurate. They need to either be realtor measured or they need to be appraiser measured. There's appraisers out there that will measure it for you. Why is that? Okay, for the listing, if you're inputting square footage, you need it to be accurate. Because why? People work, the buyers and buyers agents or the transaction brokers representing buyers, what's the first thing they do? They look at the square footage. You know, what's one of the criteria that a lot of buyers want? The house has to be a minimum square footage. So we need to have that accurate information in there. I've seen houses grow over the period of time. In 20 years, the first time it's listed, it could be 1,500 square feet. Then the next time it's listed, because you can't get the dollars to equate to the square footage may increase about 10%. So it goes up to 1,550. Well, before you know it, it's been listed a couple of times and you're looking at a 1,500 square foot house that is now 1,620 square feet. And what happens after everything is worked out and the deal has been ratified, an appraiser comes out there and says, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. So what do? We blame the appraiser, when in reality, if we had the accurate data, everything else would have been eliminated. So that's why square footage is in there. and see remarks just so you can finish inputting it, it's not acceptable. You have to remember, when you are listing property and you're inputting that property, think about how you would perceive it if you were looking at this listing for a buyer of yours. Just make sure that information is accurate. Make sure all the information that you're going to be looking for is accurate. Mapping it. Yes, ma'am. The question is, as far as having plans or specs, is that acceptable? And it is. If it is new construction, it's the second time and you have the plans and specs. Another thing that's acceptable is a previous appraisal because it's done by an appraiser. That's a great question, but yes, ma'am, it is. I would recommend that if you have the plans and specs, that there's a way that you can associate the document to that listing and have it there. But yes, if it's a relatively new home, you have the plans and specs, that's very acceptable. If it has been a previous appraisal, you can use that too because an appraiser measured it. Great questions. Mapping, making sure that the location is correct because we have so many different public portals out there, Zillow, Realtor.com, et cetera, and they work off GPS coordinates. Now, how many here know what GPS coordinates are and how to log it in? No. What we do is we take that little pointer and we move it, we save it, and it makes it work. Why is that important? Because a lot of these public portals use location to map properties, and if it's not mapped properly, it's not going to show up. We have an application, a tool, HomeSnack. If it's not mapped properly, you can be standing in front of it and it's not going to open up. So that's why it's very, very important to have the proper location in there. Owner's first name and last name. Yes, I know that there's some people that want to protect them or they don't want this information, but the fact is that if you're working with a buyer and that seller's information is not there, or if it's not correct, there's a very distinct possibility that all your paperwork, starting with the offer to purchase and the finance sales contract, anything else that has a seller's name is going to be incorrect. We have to make sure that that data is correct, and everybody has to play by the same rules. The listing company is responsible for the accuracy of the input data. Please take it upon yourself to make sure that data is accurate. Another nice bone of contention is photographs. We are now, instead of just taking them from a camera or our phone, we are now hiring photographers. And I think that's great. But the fact is that you have to be very careful about who owns the pictures, et cetera, et cetera. There is no cloning or reusing of photos from a previous listing except by that listing agent. So you can't go back and clone pictures from a previous listing. That is going to be a violation, and you have to be real careful. There could be some copyright violations involved with that. Another thing that I'm just going to go ahead and address, a lot of times if there's a listing that the seller and the listing agent did not agree, and somehow they changed companies, changed agents or whatever, it's not the listing agent's right to take those pictures away. That's part of the listing history. That's part of the data that was part of that listing, and it needs to stay in there. So you may be mad and want to take those pictures off. Don't, because there's a way to track it, and you can be fined. Now, why? Again, nobody else can clone those pictures, so you don't have to worry about it being used. It's not going to. But the fact is, if those pictures were part of that listing, it's part of the listing history. A lot of people feel like they go ahead and take it off closed listings and do the same thing, just leave that one. That is a finable offense. You cannot do that. No real estate signs in the photos. Terms to be arranged at full price. Motivated sellers are not allowed to appear in the database. Why? Because no reference that the owner will take less than full price may appear in the listing. You cannot indicate that the seller will take less than what you put it on the property and put it into the MLS. Now, does that mean that they won't take less? No, but that's to be negotiated. It's not to be addressed right up front. It's not to be indicated that way because you're basically costing them money. And in this market, chances are it's not going to happen. The motivated seller, you would hope that everybody that puts a listing in is motivated to sell. Days on the market and the cumulative days on the market are calculated from the list date to the current date. Now, I know a lot of people are very, very cognizant of the cumulative days on the market, and one of the most asked questions are, how do we get that to reset? Now, if a listing has expired and listed by the same company within 30 days, you still have to use that same MLS number. If it has been over 30 days and that company lists that property again, it will get a new MLS number, but the days on the market still calculate. The one change that's been made is now, if a property's been off the market for 60 days, then the CDOMs reset. It was 90. It's been determined that 60 is a sufficient time. So the CDOMs will fall off to 0 when the property's been off the market for 60 days. Another question that we have, because we're having so much new construction, there's some different classes and statuses and categories that need to be addressed. First, we'll start at the bottom, under or new construction. And a lot of people want to know what that means. Well, the definition is the listing is for a specific lot or structure where construction has begun but is not complete, and a CO or certificate of occupancy has not been issued. Some of the rules about new and under construction are the list price must include the price of the residential structure and lot. We understand that the price may change because of amenities and upgrades and so forth, but there needs to be a price put in there. You can't put in under new construction and put $50,000 because that's the cost of the lot. It needs to include the price of the structure. Can it change? Yes. Under construction must be selected from the approximate age. First words in the public remarks needs to let the public know, under construction. You must have at least one photo or a rendering of the property, a sketch, something like that. And it's a good idea to have the floor plan attached in the documents. A lot of times this gets confused with the proposed construction. Proposed construction is a property that's for a specific lot, but construction has not been approved. The property type when you're entering the listing must be proposed construction. The approximate age must show that it's proposed construction. The first words in the public remarks must be, yes, proposed construction. And only one proposed construction listing per floor plan can be entered. If there are 6 floor plans that are available, 6 proposed construction listings may be entered. Now be very careful because you're going to run into some duplications and just be careful what you do, but that is allowed. If you have a lot with 6 plans that can be on there, it can be entered that way. Days on the market will reset when it's changed from proposed construction to under construction, and then from under construction to new or never occupied. So that automatically resets. A lot of times there may be lots that accumulate a lot of days. There may be changes and they don't build on it. And then all of a sudden they do, and nothing's more frustrating than to see this listing that comes up and it's got 1,000 days on the market. They will reset whenever these changes take place. Entering sold data for comp purposes. This is something that's relatively new, but we need to make sure that it, like anything else, is not abused. It's not a way to increase volume. It is a way to start entering comps to make the data more accurate. Okay, these listings are optional. However, the participants must adhere to these following guidelines. To enter a listing as a comp, the participant must have a transaction broker listing agreement, meaning you can't take it upon yourself. Enter the listing into the system within 3 days after the offer has been accepted. You can't do it the day before it closes. You can't do it 3 days after it's closed. Change the listing to pending, then sold after it's closed. And again, listings cannot be added to this process after the listing has been closed. Remember, this is not a way to increase volume. This is a way to add comps to make sure that our data is accurate. Compensation. Remember, I talked about cooperation and compensation. The amount of compensation offered through the MLS may not contain provisions that varies the amount of compensation offered based on conditions. I know that the business has been changed and there's a lot of different costs that's being associated to the buyer's agent, maybe admin costs, so forth and so on. This rule covers that. Just make sure that it is addressed at the time. Not, oh, by the way. This is one that's been debated and talked about for a while. Would the changes have occurred in our statuses? Will you, yes, sir.
What about the other one? You see some listings sometimes that say based on the net, like offer, let's close it almost that and not no longer be allowed?
The question is that a lot of times it's stated into the remarks and the agent remarks that the compensation of the commission is based on the selling price minus any kind of concessions. You remember at the first, the rule states that it must have a definite dollar amount and or a percentage of the gross selling. So if there's going to be anything, it can't be stated into the listing agreement itself. If it's negotiated afterwards, the MLS has nothing to do with compensation or that's being negotiated. However, when it's entered in, that cannot be entered in. That's a great question. The statuses have changed. So now what we have is an active listing. An active listing is defined as a current listing contract existing between a property owner and a broker. The owners have not entered into a legally binding contract with an effective date. The property is available for showing and or submission of all offers to purchase or lease. The properties in the active status are calculated for days on the market. Active listings include IDX, VOW feeds, and are syndicated to third parties as directed by the broker. Now, this is something that has to be adhered to. Once you have an agreement, there is a time frame and there is a status that a listing has to be entered in. In this day and time, a pocket listing is something good. That means somebody's going to list a property and you've been given information about it. But back in the day, there was a time where a pocket listing was not good. And a pocket listing was, if I'm the listing agent and I have an agreement signed by the seller, I would put it in my pocket for days. Well, if you had a buyer, you would look into the MLS and it wasn't there. The buyer would get frustrated, call the listing agent, and he would go, oh yes, I have the property listed. Would you like to see it? And so that mess started. So that's why there is a time frame that once you have an agreement signed, you have to enter it into a different status. And there's been some other statuses that have been created, and we're going to address those. Active listings, those must be available for immediate showing. Active or break, it's an active break or a first right of refusal. This was the formerly known as the contingent listing. As we all know, every listing is contingent upon something, so this status wasn't being utilized properly. This has been created for those situations where there is an offer that's been accepted, but there is a property that needs to be sold, and that buyer has a first right of refusal on it. That's the only way that it can be in this active or break. That indicates that it can still be marketed, but there is a first right of refusal. So if you present an offer on this property, be warned that somebody has a first right of refusal. They say that the notation must be selected in the MLS listing. They will continue to syndicate. Also, the days on the market will continue to accrue. So the only time this status can be used is if there is a property that has an accepted offer on it, but there's a property that needs to be sold before that can be fully ratified. Pending. Pending means the buyer and seller have entered into a legally binding contract with an effective date. However, the property has not transferred as far as the ownership. Days on the market are stopped. So this is, once a property has it accepted, you have a certain time frame to take it off the active status. Unfortunately, a lot of realtors take it upon themselves saying, I'm going to continue the market because I don't feel like this buyer is qualified, or I don't like the situation, or there's too many different things. It's not up to us. We cannot make that determination. We have to, if it's a fully ratified between the buyer and the sellers, we have to take it off the market. Also look at it on your side. If you're working with a buyer and they want a certain house, this house is there, they go and look at it, they write an offer, you submit it, and the listing agent says, oh, I'm sorry, I've already got an offer and a backup offer on it. Who's been harmed? You as an agent have been inconvenienced, but the buyer has been harmed. And this is the time that you sort of learn that we have a code of ethics and we have Alabama license law, and they're both to protect the public from us. So we are to do everything we can to keep the public from getting harmed. That's part of the reason of the rules and regulations. We get inconvenienced, we get mad, but the public is harmed. That's why it's not up to us to determine that when you change the status from active to pending. It's when you have an accepted offer. Coming soon. Coming soon has been a status that has taken the real estate world by storm or by hurricane, depending on which side of the storm that you're on. Coming soon was intended to pre-market a property. Sellers may not have been ready to completely put the property on the market, but they want to pre-market it. You as a buyer's agent, you're looking for properties like this because you've been, as far as when a property gets active, it's gone. So now you have an opportunity to look for properties that are coming soon. The public has the same opportunity. Now, there are some rules that apply to coming soon. The coming soon must have a coming soon waiver, paperwork saying, yes, the seller agrees that this status is going to be coming soon. The coming soon status is only allowed for 30 days. You cannot continually have a property coming soon. After 30 days, the listing immediately becomes active, and the days on the market go to 31. Why is that important? We talked about the days on the market. When you have a coming soon listing, you have the opportunity for up to 30 days. When you make it active is the only time you can change that list date to get the days on the market to go to 0. If you don't, it will become active immediately, and the days on the market will start with 31, and there's no way to unring that bell. Coming soon listings must have one photo added within 3 business days of the submission. Coming soon listings can be advertised by the listing agent as coming soon. They cannot be shown active into the system. And the number one thing about a coming soon listing, you or the seller cannot show the property. No ifs, ands, or buts. It is coming soon for pre-marketing purposes only. No showing. There is an immediate fine, and it's one of those fines that you are guilty until proven innocent. So remember that about a coming soon. You have to have the addendum signed by the seller stating that this is going to be in a coming soon status, and they're aware of that. It cannot be shown by anybody, by the seller, and you must tell them that, or yourself, or you will be the one that's fined. A listing can't be active and transferred back to coming soon. Coming soon ends up showing up on valleymls.com. It's the only public site that a coming soon listing will travel to. Any of the other broker portal sites, it does not show. But because Valley is your site, it will show up there. Coming soon listings will be excluded from distribution to third-party sites. Office exclusive. This was previously known as a waiver of MLS. An office exclusive is to be entered, and there is a addendum that is signed that indicates the seller knows that it's going to be entered into the MLS per our rules. However, it is not going out for distribution to the MLS. Only the office that has it listed can see this. It is not allowed to travel to third-party sites, whether it be that office site, whether it be an agent site. There is no traveling to a third-party site. Days on the market will accrue. Expired. That means the listing contract date has passed and the listing has been terminated. There can be extensions if it's the listing company for 30 days. If the seller agrees, we put back active. The days on the market accrue. Remember that. If another company lists it, there is a new MLS number that's assigned. However, if it's been less than 60 days, the CDOMs will remain intact. Hold or temporary off the market. This was previously known as pause. A pause listing means something has come up. It could have been a sickness, could have been some other emergency in there that they need to take the property off the market. This used to be 14 days. It has now been extended to 30 days. The status is to be used when the property cannot be shown. The days on the market will accumulate. Canceled. This is what was known previously as a withdrawn listing. This means that the seller and the broker, the listing agent, mutually agree in writing that the property will be removed from the MLS and the listing agreement terminated prior to the expiration date of the executed listing agreement. This is not done on an agent level. Only brokers and office admins may change the status of a listing to canceled. Closed or sold. This is a property that has been closed and ownership has been transferred. So that's how the statuses have changed. There's been a couple that's been eliminated. There's been a couple that's been added. And it's also more defined as far as days on the market, what qualifies for a terminated listing, a first right of refusal, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. No, and that's a good question. The question was, how many times can a property be put on a hold status? And it's one time.
So even if it's hold 6 months, one into the property, and then 6 months later, just put it on hold again.
No, if during that term, the question was, can you wait a certain amount of days before it's put in there? And no, just during that listing period, only one hold. Great question. Okay. All listings displayed pursuant to IDX shall identify the listing firm in a reasonably prominent location above the details in a readily visible color and typeface not smaller than the majority used in the display of listing data. What does that mean? That means you just can't hide it. If you are posting, especially on social media, if you are posting on your website, there has to be the credit given to the listing company. It cannot be assumed that it's your listing. There needs to be something out there displaying that information of the listing company. In social media, especially, it's really hard to do that. So be very careful when reposting properties that's not your listing. The Alabama Real Estate Commission has started putting rules in place for this, and this is something that's being looked at very closely. We have our own rules in that, and it's, again, really for your protection, and it's for the protection of the seller. Now the words that you've longed to hear. In closing, what we're doing with the rules and regs, again, it is not something to make your job harder. It is not anything to inconvenience you. It is here to make sure that all the data is accurate and that the public is not harmed by any way that we have as far as the data that's being disseminated. Also, that any information that gets out to the public can and will be accurate. I'll open up the floor for any questions. For those people that are on Facebook Live, thank you so much. If there are any questions, you can submit it and I'll try to get to it at another time. It should be today, but I do appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend it with us. Are there any questions that we might share? Yes, sir.
Are there any other, you have to get permission to post somebody else's listing other than having their broker?
Good question. If the question was, do you need the seller's permission to post a listing that's not yours or the listing agent? And the answer is yes. I believe it is covered in the code that you can't advertise property that's not yours. So if you do not have the seller's permission for you to advertise it, you must gain that permission, but it's a great question. Yes, ma'am. Great question. It is, the question was, can you accept an offer on a property that's coming soon? And the answer is yes, as long as it hasn't been shown. Now, here's a commercial. I would strongly suggest that you put into the provisions that the property has been offered to be purchased sight unseen. That's just the risk management part. That comes free of charge. I was going to go over some of the listing examples as far as violations. Are there any more questions before I get into that?
Just back to the idea on social media. So if you're sharing, does it have to be at the top of your post? The listing company?
It has to be prominently displayed. Right here, it gives the instructions here. All listings displayed shall identify the listing firm in a reasonably prominent location above the details. So it gives specific location for where the listing information, it can't be buried. Also, it doesn't give a specific font size. However, it does say must not be smaller than the majority used in the display of the listing data. Again, great question. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I noticed that there's no longer property status, that there's no longer a contingency.
Right.
So that's just now pending.
Right, exactly. The pending status is a status that has a accepted offer on it with a date that the property is to be closed. It's an agreement that's been ratified by the buyer and seller, and that it is no longer can be purchased without legal ramifications. So that's why it goes into that pending status. The positive is the days on the market stop. So if something happens, you do not accumulate days on the market during that time it's been accepted as a pending listing. Yes, ma'am.
But you can, if you have an offer and it's contingent on selling that property, then you can change the status to that. Right.
And the question was, if it is contingent on the sale and close of another property, can it be active break? And the answer to that is yes. That's the only way that you can use that. Great question again. That had to be clarified because a lot of times the contingency status was being misused. Any other questions? Comments? All hearts and minds clear. Before we end, I want to address some of the offenses, listing input errors, things that are commonly addressed, and a lot of times our listing data checker does catch it. Again, the sign, whether it be a percentage sign or a dollar sign, when you're entering the listing, needs to be in there. The system will catch it if it's not corrected. Let me state this. The MLS department is not here trying to fine you. The MLS department is here trying to make sure that all the data is accurate. You're given opportunities on most of these violations to correct them. The only time a fine kicks into place is when it's not corrected within the time frame, number one. Also, if you've never been fined before, there is an opportunity to request to waive that fine. So again, let me stress, the MLS department and the MLS is not here to get your money. It is here to make sure that all the data is accurate and everybody's playing by the rules. And we all know that we're not going to pay attention to it until it hits our wallet. So that's why these fines have been imposed. Another thing is the incorrect schools, if it's been determined, and that can have a lot of ramifications to it. So if it's not been changed, that is a finable offense. Incorrect lot sizes. Let's do our due diligence and don't assume that a lot that's 100 by 150 is 300 by 500. We have all the access to get the accurate data and the dimensions in there. On this reporting, a lot of times the incorrect selling agent is input. All that takes is a simple email. It can be corrected, no problems. However, when you start inputting incorrect sales team and sales team sold data, that can be a violation not only of the MLS rules, but it can get much greater than that. So there are rules in place to make sure that the proper team and the proper licensee gets credit for the sale. Some of the fines that you are guilty until proven innocent. If you give your password to someone, then there's ways to track it. You will be guilty until you appear before a panel of your peers and plead your case and prove that and provide data saying that that's not been done. The coming soon. We all think that we're the ones that we can get away with it. We're going to go ahead and show it. It's the 29th day. These buyers are getting ready to leave town. No, be sure your sins will find you out. There's going to be ways. And what's going to happen, these scenarios happen all the time. What's going to happen is on the 29th day, you have somebody that's going to be out of town. You show the property. On the 30th day, they make it active, and you have 5 other people that have been waiting to show that property. They make an appointment, and you have to tell them, oh, I'm sorry, there's an accepted offer on the property. It's 7 o'clock in the morning on the first day. When did you show the property? At 3 this morning? Oh, well, and then you go into that. Trust me, there's ways of finding that, and you will be reported. The assistant information and assuming identities, that's something that needs to be addressed. There's paperwork that needs to be filled out if somebody's addressing or assuming the identity of someone. Room sizes. Those are something that are basically flagrant. You had to put 0 by 0 or 1 by 1. That's unacceptable. The least you can do for somebody that's going to be paying you X amount of dollars is to go out and measure the rooms. That was a commercial also. Taking data, square footage, etc., off of previous information, number one, and then saying square footage taken from a previous listing, that's not acceptable. That will be a fine. And also, something that's done and it's being addressed and looked at very carefully is address manipulation. What we are doing is we're looking, a lot of times somebody may have a listing that's been on the market for 300 days. So somebody else gets it and says it's been within that 30 days or 60 days before the CDOM's reset, but it sure would be nice if I could get that to reset. So they implement or they add a directional to it, make the address look appear to try to beat the system. Trust me, that will come back to haunt you too, because that's you're fraudulently and you're doing this on purpose. You know that you're doing this, and it's something that will not be tolerated and accepted. Any other? Yes, sir.
Going back to this contingency, so a home inspection is no longer considered a contingency status in MLS?
No, it is not. And that's a good question. Basically the question was, is a home inspection a contingency on the sales contract? Is it contingent? Yes, it is still a contingency in that particular contract. However, it is not the only way that it can be taken and still marketed is with a first right of refusal. Every offer to purchase has a contingency: financing, home inspections, wood infestations, so forth and so on. So everybody had a contingency offer. But what that was not doing is giving a fair picture, saying, okay, this is one of the readily accepted offers. This is the way a traditional offer works. You have the time frame for home inspections and other inspections, appraisals, so forth and so on. You know, every offer is contingent upon something. However, the only way that a property can be continued to be marketed is if there's a first right of refusal on the property. So that's why that status was created.
So it means, so contingencies still remain active in the MLS, continue to drop off as far as Valley MLS.
The question was, as far as contingency still remaining MLS, the contingency status has been removed. There's only an active break, and then pending. So anything that has an accepted offer shall be off market and is going to be pending. There's no other status in there. All these rules, the question was, when was this rule implemented? And these start taking place in October, so they probably would have been approved either the last O&D meeting or officers and directors meeting, or maybe the one before.
It's gonna be October.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Sure will. Yes, please. Anybody that has questions, you can email me, mike@valleymls.com. Also, you can find the rules and regs on your Paragon homepage without messing it up. If you'll call me or if you'll email me, I will give you the steps and instructions on how you can find the rules and regulations on the homepage and how you can find the particular question that you might have by just typing in a word instead of going through the 48 pages or somewhat in there. Questions? Comments about anything else besides me? I want to again thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us. And again, if there's any questions, you can email me at mike@valleymls.com. Thank you again.
What is it that you want? My comment was, we were talking about, the possibility of contingency. And most times, contingency usually pass, a lot of times people would put in, oh, I got an offer, I'm not sure if it's work. I got an offer, pending inspection. And so that's all pending. That's all pending. As long as it's an offer, then you have to go ahead and put it on. If